I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're diving into a gripping financial thriller that is just filled with high stakes deception, offshore intrigue, and dangerous secrets. The name of the book, The St. Kitts Connection. It's written by a terrific author. His name is Alan E. Tonks, and it follows Terry Downs, a commercial banker who stumbles into a world of money laundering, corruption, and international scandal. If you love page-turning suspense with real-world financial and political stakes, this book is a must-read. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below the interview. And be sure to download the Spotlight Network TV app, streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Alan, great to see you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
That's my pleasure, Logan. My pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine, sir. This is an amazing read. The St. Kitts connection feels very, very real. Is it based in part on real life events?
Yeah, yeah, it is. I wrote the book back in, I guess it was around 95, 96, and republished it recently.
And
Yeah.
what was your inspiration back then in the 90s to write this?
Well, it all started, I'm an immigrant from England, and I immigrated in 1964 and got a job as a teller in a big bank, and without a college degree, I might add. And I worked my way through the ranks, became vice president in 1972, and I was well on my way to success. Big job, lots of responsibility, all exactly what I needed. And uh, got kind of disenchanted, bored, and took a job with a bank in Wilmington, Delaware, and that resulted in me being senior vice president in charge of all the finance and operations and big bank. And then I was recruited away from the bank to join a bank here in West Palm Beach as vice chairman and chief operating officer. And I was unceremoniously let go after a couple of years. God, sorry.
No worries.
And I was kind of at the time sort of questioning my career, whether I wanted to stay in banking, and I met up with a couple of guys, Canadian guys, and they offered me a position. They had very, very wealthy fellas and lots of property here in West Palm Beach and Palm Beach County. And they also had an offshore bank in St. Kitts. And they asked me if I'd be interested in running the bank. And I wasn't doing much at the time. I'd formed a consulting business. And they uh, offered me a real good opportunity, I guess. And in part of my due diligence, I asked them if I could visit the bank in St. Kitts, and they agreed. We went to Toronto, then to St. Kitts, and then to Miami to visit with the lawyers. I thought I'd completed a good round of checking out these people, and I decided to accept the job. And I had an office here in Wellington, and gee, I guess it was about 3 or 4 weeks later, uh, we were visited by the FBI and the DEA, and a whole bunch of other people, and including the local sheriff's department. They issued a cease and desist order and uh, closed everything up, told everybody to leave. And I was interviewed very strongly by the FBI. And they said, look, this is a big drug operation. You know what you got yourself into. And I was shocked. So that was, I thought, the end of it. And I testified in front of a federal grand jury in San Diego, California. And these guys got the end result of that was 15 to 20 years
Hmm.
in U.S. Lockup, and then it was. I understand they were then convicted in a Canadian prison. So it was a big deal,
Yeah.
and it was a big deal that wasn't known to many people. So I went on my way and just sort of kicked myself in the pants for not realizing what this thing was, and it was a worldwide distribution.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess a couple of years later, I got a call from a newspaper reporter in Delhi, India, and he had in his possession a copy of an agreement, offshore agreement in the bank in St. Kitts, First Investors Trust. And the reporter wanted me to confirm an account that was in the name of a gentleman that was running for Prime Minister of India.
Hmm.
And offshore banks have some very strict rules when it comes to disclosure. And
Hmm.
I wouldn't answer his request and hung up the phone. And a couple of hours later, I got another call from the Observer in London,
Hmm.
and it was like a recording of the first call. And the guy was very adamant. We've got your signature on this agreement. You got to confirm this with us. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And I hung up the phone, called my lawyer. Um, he was upset that I didn't call him before I had picked up the phone. So I decided to call the manager of the bank in St. Kitts. His name was George McLeod.
Hmm.
And I said, what's going on here? Well, he said, I expected your call. And he said, we've got a ticket at the Miami airport to Toronto. We're expecting you tomorrow. And I said, well, what's it all about? He said, just get on the plane and meet us in Toronto. So I did, and very nervous, of course, and don't know why I did it, but I did. And somebody picked me up at the airport in a big stretch limo and took me to one of the most luxurious places that I've ever been to. It was about 30 or 40 minutes away in Mississauga. And the place had Rolls Royce, stretched Rolls Royces, a lot of Indian people running around, and cold as hell, if I recall. And I was greeted at the door by a gentleman, George McLeod, had introduced me to this gentleman by the name of Muller. And the whole purpose of this meeting was to get me to change my mind on answering these reporters' calls.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't do it, and then he introduced me to a gentleman that was in traditional robes, big red dot in the middle of his forehead. It was obviously some Indian tantric, but he was introduced to me as the leader of the Hindu religion.
Mhm.
And he said, "Look, we want you to, for the sake of humanity, we want you to agree to this account at St. Kitts, of which, by the way, had $50 million in deposits in the account,
Mm.
and it was obviously a setup. So I wouldn't do it." And he said, "Well, we want you to meet with Swamiji," and and I did. And he showed me a book of all of the people that were his customers, his friends, his religious contacts. Included in there was like Hollywood names.
Mm.
Uh, um, and it didn't persuade me. I said, I'm not just not going to do it. St. Kitts has some very strong privacy laws, and I'm not going to attest to that account. So they asked me to meet with Swamiji in his place in New York the following day, which I agreed to do. I agreed to go to New York. The place was on 52nd Street, the Olympus Towers, and I was greeted there. I mean, just unbelievable. I thought, I just have never experienced anything like it in my life.
Mhm.
And there was Swamiji and his minions, all in robes, and they tried to convince me. And they said, "Well, um, since we can't convince you, how about if you follow us upstairs to Mr. Khashoggi, Adnan Khashoggi, who was at the time the richest guy in the world, and he had the most luxurious place I've ever seen." And I met him, and we sat down and chatted. And he said, "Look, he said, we know that this is out of the ordinary, but we're asking you to do this, and the end result was it would be very favorable for you." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "At the time, the Gulf War was going on, and he had connections all over the world, and his brother would give me the contract for the water, the bottling of water in the Gulf War, which was
Wow.
supposedly a big deal. And I could imagine it was a big.
Yeah.
So I said, "Look, I cannot uh, attest to something that I'm not supposed to do." And I said,
Mm.
"Furthermore, my name was forged on those accounts. I was never the managing director of the bank. I've only been there once." And of course, I started then to realize that it was one monumental setup.
Mm.
And Mr. Khashoggi was very gracious. He said, "Well, how about if you just leave it and I don't have a comment, so to speak." And I said, "That's exactly what I'd like to do." So I did,
Mm.
and got back to West Palm Beach, feeling pretty uncomfortable,
Mhm.
and decided that I was going to follow up. And I grabbed a newspaper reporter and went back down to St. Kitts and tried to find out what was going on. And the rest of the story, of course, is I leave to your readers.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. It's like, almost like a Hitchcock thriller of an ordinary man thrust into an extraordinary situation. You literally had just dipped your toe into international banking
Yeah,
offshore, and the world came down on you, both law enforcement and the most powerful, richest people in the world. You must have felt like,
I thought
how's
I
this
was
going to
dreaming,
end?
Logan. I thought I was actually in a dream.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it was happening to me. I was from one of the most conservative banks in the country. I
Mm.
was a coat and tie banker,
Yeah.
and you know, I kept straight the whole time. I never even knew that. drugs were a problem in Wellington, for instance. Never mind being introduced to the upper echelon of what goes on. But yeah,
Amazing,
he was,
amazing.
yeah.
Have you envisioned this as a film? I think it'd be a terrific movie.
I've written a script actually, and I'm going to pitch it. The guys at Pinnacle Hybrid,
Mhm.
Tracy Noble and Kai Jameson, who I'm very very happy with,
Great.
have arranged for me to pitch my script next month. Actually, it's my first attempt at writing a script. I followed all the all the notes. I attended Burt Reynolds Institute up in Jupiter.
Mhm.
So I think it stands a chance.
Yeah. I think on the story alone, it's such a compelling story.
Yeah,
It's such an amazing story. And the fact that it's a true story,
yeah,
it kind of reminds me of like Catch Me If You Can with, Leonardo DiCaprio. Like you can't
yeah.
believe the things that are unfolding, but they did unfold. Fortunately, you weren't sucked up into it and landed behind bars. That's the lucky part, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. To this day, I don't quite get it.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy at the FBI when he was interviewing me could have just put the cuffs on me and right
Yeah.
there and there.
And let you prove it later.
Yeah,
Make you prove it. And by the time you're bankrupt, by the time you're, destitute, it's hard to do. It's amazing. And then if you had spent more time working for that company, money is very seductive. You
yeah,
know, the idea of turning a blind eye to what they're doing might have occurred to you, but fortunately it didn't. You weren't in it very long. The world came crashing down around you right away. I mean, and the same thing true was when you were with Khashoggi, that to give up this political leader would have been easy to do in exchange for a lucrative contract. Imagine supplying water to all of the armed services
yeah,
in the desert.
yeah,
That's the one thing they need. They need that more than bullets,
yeah,
you know?
for sure.
Amazing, amazing. It's an amazing story, folks. It's called The St. Kitts Connection. It's written by Alan Tonks. It's a novel, yes, but it's based on true life. It follows Terry Downs, a commercial banker who kind of resembles Alan in many ways, who stumbles into a world of money laundering, corruption, and international scandal. If you love page turners, this is the book for you. Alan, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I
Appreciate
appreciate your time, sir. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.